Welcome. Today we're going to be getting to know all about your different Intelliquilter components. I am Tracy Browning and I am a 5-star Intelliquilter dealer from Australia. I've installed on all brands and models of quilting machines since 2006, and even some that are not even found in the USA. So today we're going to have a look at what is in the box when you first get your Intelliquilter. And if you go have a look at your own Intelliquilter installed on your Longarm machine, you'll start to recognize the different components and what they are called. Hopefully this will assist you when you may need to troubleshoot with either your dealer or with support, just so that you've got the right terminology, you're calling all the different parts the right name and you're on the same page. So let's get started. In the box, the first thing that you'll find, or one of the things you'll find, the main, is the Intelliquilter tablet. And there have been a number of different types or models of tablets over the years, remembering that Intelliquilter has been producing this system now for 13 years. And we did start out with the Sahara T201 tablet, which is that one. And after that, we moved on to the i400 and i500 Sahara series tablets. Currently today, the classic system, the top of the line, is being fulfilled with a Surface Pro tablet. But it looks absolutely gorgeous. It's really sleek, has very little border around it, so you've got a great view of the whole screen. In more recent years, we now also have the smaller 9.7-inch tablet, which is the basic tablet. This is more like an iPad in size, and the operating system on this one is not quite as fast or can handle all the full features of the classic system, but it's much more affordable. The next thing in your box you'll find are your motors. You have an X motor. Can you see there's that little X on there? And you have a Y motor. Now the X motor is the one that is mounted to your carriage and it runs across the table. I like to think of X as in a cross. So it travels the furthest distance from right to left on your machine table. Your Y motor moves your Longarm machine forwards and backwards, so back to front. I sometimes say think about the Y fronts, and you're going back to front using the Y motor, and that's normally mounted on your sewing head, either on the axle or on the side of your machine. Every brand will be slightly different on how it is mounted on your machine. Now the components of your motor, I've got some photographs here of the original motors, the older ones with the white gears, and quite a few will probably still have these, and they were a little bit harder. I've written on this one so I know what it is, and as you can see when you look in close to this part that I've circled with the yellow circle, there are 2 lines of solder there. They are not connected. There's an X on the side. If there was a solder connecting those 2 lines, it would be an X motor. Because there is no connection, it is designated a Y motor. When you turn that motor upside down, you'll see the drive wheel. And this is the same whether you have the older version motors or any of the super motors. There is a flat, small drive wheel, and that's what is attached to your tracks and physically connects to drive your machine to follow a pattern. The other wheel on the motor is a larger wheel. That's the sensor wheel. And in the older version motors, it's on this arm, and there's a spring that holds that arm onto the track of your machine so that wheel is connected at all times. There is no resistance on that wheel. There shouldn't be any thread around it. It should be able to spin quite freely if you lift it up when it's not attached to the track. The drive wheel will always have some resistance. Now, At one point, Zoltan did explain if it's hard to remember which is the sensor wheel, the larger one, or the drive wheel, the smaller one. He likens our drive wheels to a Formula One racing car wheel. If you can put that image in your mind, a Formula One car has really, really large flat wheels. They have as much rubber as possible connecting with the surface, the road surface, so that it has super duper control when it's going around corners and changing directions. And it's the same with our Intelliquilter motors. We have Formula One rubber drive wheels that will drive our machines in every direction very, very accurately. The next slide is actually showing the most current, the super motors. On these, we have the new pulleys and a notched belt. Some of you will have pulleys with a clear rubber belt, an O-ring style. That's sort of the middle version, but the latest will have the notch belt and pulleys. If you can't find or you would like to upgrade, you can always contact support to actually upgrade any of your super motors with the clear rubber belts to the pulleys with the notched belt, which seem to be lasting forever and, again, are much more accurate. Now, on the new super motors, you'll find a couple of other differences. One is where you can see this yellow circle right there, and on here you'll see a Y on that side and an X on that side. There is a black little jumper or connector that is over the two pins on the Y side to turn this motor into a Y motor. It can simply be lifted off and then repositioned on the two pins on the X side, and then that will determine that it is a X motor. So much easier to swap. The motors are exactly the same. It's just whether they've been designated X or Y. You'll also see here's our drive wheel here. And now we have a larger sensor wheel, which is looking a little bit different again. And it is on a very strong spring inside this block here. And you'll find that when it's actually being mounted on your machine, the most crucial part is that little screw there is raised so that the spring has been compressed slightly, and you can see a few threads of the thread between the block and the top of that screw. So that is your new super motors and the different parts to it: drive wheel, sensor wheel, and the new pulleys and notched belts. The important part that actually connects everything together is the wiring harness. These will be slightly different depending on the brand of machine that you have. But the simple concept is that this is the junction box, the black box there, and that is mounted on the rear of your machine, either on the center of the carriage or on one of the either side of the carriage. On the rail there, and we have the power that goes in. So you can see on your junction box there's a P, a T, a Y and an X. So that's the power in. It is the tablet power out. So the tablet power will then, or those wires will head on up to the front of your machine and be plugged in on the docking station. There's a communication cable, and then there's the power to the tablet itself cable. So you can see that's the power to the tablet, and that there is the communication cable going into the docking station. And then the X and the Y connections, those wires have got plugs on the end of those that get plugged into each of your motors. The tablet needs somewhere to sit when it's on top of your machine, and these are just a couple of the different docking stations. Every model or brand of tablet will have a docking station to match it, and they are connected either by this connection here. This is actually a T201 Sahara docking station. The i400 and i500 docking stations look very similar, but they have a clamp on either side to hold the tablet in place, whereas the T201 had a clamp on top. This is the latest docking station for the Surface Pro. The connection on from the tablet to the docking station for the Surface Pro is a USB connection, and that's located right down the bottom there. So I must be very careful taking that tablet on and off. Plus there is a clamp on the top to ensure the safety of your tablet on your docking station. Again, there'll be a different looking docking station to suit the size of the basic tablets. Then, of course, to be able to put that on your particular brand of machine, we need a bracket to hold the docking station. This one happens to be for an A1 Platinum with an Android tablet, but every machine will have a slightly different bracket and be mounted on your machines in different ways. So they will be unique to your brand of your machine. Then we have more brackets, and again, this is just a variety of brackets that I happen to have on hand to show you, but you'll have an X motor bracket and a Y motor bracket, and every brand and model can have something slightly different. All the brackets these days are no drill. They will be mounted using existing tapped holes on your machine, or in this case, that one is clamped onto the axles, that Y motor bracket on that particular machine there, so that they're nice and sturdy and will not move. The one thing in common with all of your motor brackets is this adjustment plate where there are 4 screws, and that plate will help you adjust your motors so that they are perfectly parallel, they're perfectly level, and they're not tilted in any way or skewed. So once we've got them on and we've got them close, all the final minute adjustments are made using the adjustment plate on your X and your Y motor brackets. Then we have the switch cable. Now the switch cable is the only cable that actually interacts with your Longarm machine. The Intelliquilter can be run, is totally independent electronically, except for this cable. So that's why we can run in preview without even your Longarm machine turned on. But what this cable does is, the common denominator is actually this 6-pin connector, that green 6-pin connector on all of these. That is plugged into the rear of your docking station, and then the other end is what will be plugged into your Longarm machine. And what it simply does, it is piggybacking the controls on your Longarm that commands the single stitch and the start switch. So you need to set your Longarm in the mode that you need, and we do recommend that it be in manual mode. And you'll use the settings on your Longarm to actually control the speed that it's running in manual. And then on the IQ screen, we can set the speed that we want the machine to be moved around. And that's how we get our consistent stitch length. It is the relationship between how fast the Intelliquilter motors are moving your sewing head and how fast the needle is going up and down in manual mode on your quilting machine. So for these 4 cables, just as examples, this first one over here is for the A1 Platinum. The second one on top in the middle here is for an APQS Millennium after 2013. The one in the middle at the bottom is the A1 Elite. And then the last one here is actually for a very old Gamel with no stitch regulator, but it does have a needle position, so it's the Gamel minus machines, and that works a treat. Then we can use the older machines with no stitch regulator with the Intelliquilter system. Okay, this is the same for any brand. This is our thread break detector and cable. So the thread break detector is your top thread is wrapped around the wheel on here. So wrapped around this wheel, so that wheel is turning in a clockwise direction. And then the cable, this one has little telephone connectors on either end, and simply one gets plugged into the rear of the thread break detector and the other end is plugged into the docking station. This is the motor power supply. So we all get exactly the same motor power supply, and that wiring harness that we looked at earlier does get wired into here. And this is what supplies the power to our motors. It will take 110 right through to 240 volt, and it will step it down to only 24 volts that will run the motors. It does have a little, on that wiring harness, there's a little extension cable with an additional wire that runs through to power the tablet, but that power does not come from this power supply. Now, these are usually mounted in the center of your table underneath. The holes are in there because it does require some air movement around. You don't want that to get clogged up or covered in and get too hot. There is a cover that goes across these terminals. So these terminals are live when there's power turned on. So it is quite important that the cover remains on when you are using your machine to protect anybody from accidentally touching any of those terminals. And I have gotten some pictures here because here in Australia we have 240 volts. We rewire everything to run on 240, which is the computer can easily do that. All computers run on all types of power. And so this is just simply for any Aussies there. You can see exactly how the wires are wired in, and the bottom picture here is all the US machines with a US power cord on there. This is your tablet power supply. And guess what? It looks exactly like your laptop power supply because that's exactly what it is. Your Intelliquilter tablet is a laptop. It's a portable tablet. It's just that it has been set up so that the only program you can use on it is the Intelliquilter, and it's run on a Linux operating system. So that's purely what that is. That tablet power supply is plugged into the extension cable, runs with the motor power supply or the wiring harness, and it will travel. And you can take that on and off as you like if you need to charge your tablet off the machine. But otherwise, we leave it plugged in under the table to get power to your tablet. Okay, you will also have a small plastic bag with which is different for your brand of Longarm machine. And inside it will be safety stoppers, bolts and screws that are needed to actually install on your particular Longarm machine. And then we potentially would have an installation kit that is specific for your brand or model of Longarm machine. And these could be any of the following depending on your brand. And any upgrades or additions that you might have made to your machine. So you could also be purchasing edge rider wheels, extra rails for your carriage, table braces, and any extended brackets for hydraulics, etc. So that's the extra things that you may have needed to have in your kit, in your box, to set the Intelliquilter up on your Longarm machine. So there you go. That is a list of all the Intelliquilter components and all the names of those parts with pictures. So hopefully you can go and look at your own machine and recognize those different components. It is actually it's a very complex system that is so simple to be able to diagnose or troubleshoot. You've just got to remember that your tablet is the brain of your system. It needs to be on a docking station so that it can communicate via that junction box to both the motors, which are also powered via that junction box, and the wiring harness and the power supply. So we can only, when we're troubleshooting, we're really only troubleshooting the interface, which is the docking station, and the X and the Y motors and how they're all communicating with the tablet. And there are ways and means that support and or your dealer can guide you through in trying to narrow down on where any issues may lie when your Intelliquilter isn't working as it should be.